Good evening, everyone. Yang Yan Chao back again. Tonight we have an extra special guest who will be here in just a second. But just a friendly reminder that October is coming up, and what better thing would you want for Spook Month than Empire, which is my uh, campaign guide for both Dungeons and Dragons 5e and 1e. It is a horror campaign of American style horror. The game is meant to feel like a classic D&D adventure from days of yore. We have all sorts of special rules. We have the Dream Realm, where your players may have to deal with nightmares haunting them, or perhaps they can even become somebody else's Freddy Krueger. Wargaming takes a pop back up. We have New England style horror, something in the woods. We have swashbuckling naval adventures, and we end up in the empire of the undying sun, a land ruled by a single god who demands blood sacrifice. So if you just go to empireoftheundyingsun.com, you can register to be notified. And in addition to the campaign guide, we have adventure modules. If you become a VIP for the low cost of $2.99, you will also get one module, Fairy Hill, written by the Dungeon Delver, aka Bill Sylvie. So hopefully we'll see you soon for that. And now, tonight's extra special guest. She is a woman who is no stranger to the future and to fantasy. Perhaps someone who is on her way to becoming a druid or a Disney princess, as she is the Queen of Raccoons. We have tonight author extraordinaire Alyssa Hazel.
Hello. Hi. I am Alyssa. I am a writer of speculative and weird fiction. Sometimes that goes in the more horror direction. Sometimes that goes fantasy and sci-fi. I just released in July the sequel to my first science fiction novel, and that's going pretty well. And right now, I am writing the conclusion to my first duology, which is first book's called Among the Juniper Trees, and the second is Beyond the Juniper Trees. Very, very creative, I know. And it is a low fantasy, almost pseudo historical with a Grimm's fairy tale bent. So if you are interested in getting updates about that, that will be all across my socials, especially on X.
And for anyone looking for those socials, if you are viewing this on YouTube, just go down to the description and you will find the links to both her X account, Twitter, if you prefer, and also a link to her own website where you can find out more about the books, and also pinned in the comments. It's there. And if you're not subscribed on YouTube, why not? Go over at Yang Yan Chow 4 on YouTube. Just subscribe. It's easy. But Alyssa, thanks for coming. I wanted to have you on for a while, but I just haven't had the chance to make it happen. So many questions, and I guess the first is, as you mentioned, sci-fi, fantasy, horror. What is it about those genres that really speak to you? And
Well, horror is my first love, and I think that horror has a way of blending very well into other genres. For example, um, if you look at, say, Frankenstein, it's basically the world's first like horror sci-fi, at least the one that we recognize the most. Then, if you look at, say, Clark Ashton Smith's work, particularly there's one I feel bad that I don't remember the title, but one of my favorite ones is the story of two thieves who encounter what's essentially a shoggoth in this ancient temple, and one of them loses his hand. That's just straight out of like Lovecraftian horror, and it's just a great place where fantasy and horror kind of go hand in hand. So usually for me, If you hear screaming, that's the dog. She is in a cone. She is
Oh,
a Shiba Inu and very dramatic. So if you hear occasionally the sounds of murder, which is kind of funny when I'm talking about horror, that is just the dog. She's fine. She's just in a cone of shame right now. I'm so sorry. Um, but I think it's very much it collides very well with different ideas, and I like taking that and then exploring the different genres and how they interact and how you can create kind of off the beaten paths iteration of those genres. And I don't know, it's just fun to experiment and play around with different genres.
yeah, I have to agree with horror. It's possibly the first genre of storytelling ever for human
Yeah,
beings. And it seems like, you know, like Coca-Cola, it sort of goes with everything.
yeah, true. Um, no, that's it's if you look back to like ancient tales told around the fire, like a lot of them were horror intended to warn us about not going into certain places or not trusting certain things, or I think that and like probably epics and like epic poems told through oral history are probably two of the oldest genres.
Yeah,
Um and those typically had a great deal of horror in them as well. So, yeah, it's a pretty primordial genre, so to speak.
I think so. So getting over to science fiction and fantasy, we were talking a little bit back in the green room. Um, it seems to me, since I'm an old fart, that like science fiction has changed a lot, and so has fantasy.
Yeah,
So science fiction, although there was always like a military element to it, action oriented element, um, there was it wasn't really that depressing until you get like a cyberpunk era in the 80s.
yeah,
Cyberpunk was cool.
yeah,
It's a dystopia run by corporations, but you still kind of wanted to live there.
yeah,
Whereas it seems like, I don't know, like modern sci-fi has seemed to have lost its gas. Uh,
hmm.
wh- where do you think we are, and where do you think we're going with sci-fi?
I just full disclosure, I am not as well read in terms of modern science fiction right now. Most of the stuff that I have read is either kind of the 60s, 60s kind of stuff, Isaac Asimov.
Yeah.
I read Day of the Triffids fairly recently, and I would categorize that in science fiction. Um, I read a couple of BattleTech books from like the mid 2000s, I believe. Robert Thurston mostly. I think that science fiction right now is probably going through an identity crisis because a lot of the things that used to be science fiction are now reality. And it's started to enter this era of, um, I don't want to call it mundanity,
Hmm.
but it's unfortunately, and I don't want to get too scrolled into the AI conversation because that can be depressing in and of itself. Um, no matter which way you fall on the fence. But um, I think AI has put science fiction in this kind of awkward position where, okay, AI was like the last big thing that we hadn't done yet,
Hmm.
and now it's like all the other things that were science fiction that were being predicted are like, oh, science fiction was a warning, not a guideline on to how to do this, that kind of thing. Um, so I think, oh, hello, it's after Rick and Morty ruined sci-fi. I think so. I think science fiction requires a level of letting yourself dream
Hmm.
in terms of what is possible and what could be. And I think that's why 60s sci-fi is so much fun, is because I'm not saying putting too much hard science into sci-fi, because now that we know things don't work like that, it's just like it takes a little bit out of the fun, and I don't say whimsy because I don't know if that's the right term, but it's taken some of the wonder out of science fiction. Like uh Star Trek was like, oh, going places in space, and now it's just like, okay, people go up regularly. There are people like getting tickets to in the future to go to Mars, and it's that kind of space travel still isn't like solid yet, but it's still in our lifetimes potentially. It's no longer like a dream that's far away. Like one day I'll get there. Um, I think that's probably an issue that science fiction is going to have to overcome at some point. And I don't know if it's just going to have to be a moment of science fiction writers just saying, screw it. I'm going to write 60s sci fi and I'm not going to explain anything. And the people on Reddit can kiss my butt. I don't care if it doesn't like gel kosher wise with your physics, Francis. I'm gonna launch this person through space in a ship that's not like aerodynamically suitable, like that kind of thing. Um,
It seems to me that science fiction and fantasy always paired well,
mm,
especially classically, because so much of the technology seemed like fantasy, anyways.
yeah,
But is there really that much of a difference between a scientist did it and a wizard did it?
I think so. I think the interesting balance with science fiction is that there was a sense of this could be. If you look at say Michael Crichton's work, and Michael Crichton is my he's my shadow boxing buddy because he's in his lifetime was a medical student, a professional basketball player, almost 7 feet tall, ridiculously good looking, wrote Jurassic Park to pay for his student. His student. He's so good, and I hate him a little bit. A little bit. And he also wrote like pulp mysteries and stuff underneath a different name. Like so I can't hate him because he's probably also like a really nice guy. Like he probably was like a
That's the
oh they're the worst people. Why can't but it's he's kind of like the Dolph Lundgren to my Sylvester Stallone. But that's a wildly different wormhole conversation. But Michael Crichton's work, even if it wasn't always completely scientifically accurate, it was just feasible enough
Mhm.
that you felt like, and this is where like the whimsy and stuff comes in. Whimsy, is that you could potentially believe that this could happen, and with that, there was like this kind of suspension of disbelief where you saw our reality and saw what could be, as opposed to fantasy where it's I want to depart this reality entirely and dream of what could be in another plane of existence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so
And
it's a difference between I wonder where our reality could take us, and fantasy is where I could be taken out of our reality,
uh,
kind of.
I guess that's true. And you mentioned something that I've been wondering for a while,
Mhm.
um, which is, oh, and now I totally forgot how you phrased it. We seem to be in a almost like a malaise,
Yeah,
at least in Western society, where it seems like we just don't have the oomph to imagine anymore. To some
yeah,
extent, like there were a lot of big ideas in sci-fi,
yeah,
and same with fantasy. Especially once you sort of get around to a little bit more modern fantasy.
yeah,
But it almost feels like we're not there anymore. And uh, in tabletop role playing game parlance, I would say it's like the barista module, where
mm,
it wasn't put out by Wizards of the Coast. It was just somebody published it on their own, and like their whole thing was, basically fantasizing about being a barista, which to me kind of hurts my heart because like you could do that in real life.
yeah. Well, I mean, as somebody who was at one point a barista for a stretch, it's not as fun as people think it is. Oh, definitely.
No,
I know, English major, occasionally dyes my hair. At one point, I was a barista. Don't don't at me on Twitter. Um, but I think okay, and I'm not gonna be a full apologist for this style of fantasy, but I think it comes. There is a, um, I think especially for people, flashing back to like Michael Douglas's Falling Down and things like that, and Neo and the Matrix and things like that. There is um a fantasy and escapism that you want to find from your day-to-day life. And I think that when you I think for some people the fantasy is I just want to sit and make coffee and live in a quiet small town where everybody knows my name and comes in for their daily order. And there's that one grumpy guy, but like life is easy and I don't have to have accounts to somebody by then. And every day I get up at this time in the morning and go to sleep at this time at night. And um honestly, for some people who live in like a who have like a high pressure corporate job or like that kind of thing, there might be a certain fantasy, and that's where I think cozy fantasy starts coming in a lot more.
uh,
And I think the reason why it's popular with a lot of um I don't want to just blanket say women, because I think there are guys who enjoy the genre too, but I think they primarily target women. I think a lot of women have gotten the phrase hustle culture comes up a lot in discussion. I think a lot of women have gotten caught up in the I have to go and do this, and I have to get my corporate job, and I have to do this, and I have to do this, and I have to be everything all at once. And I think that the element of cozy fantasy that comes in is I can just be, like, I don't have to run off on this adventure and that adventure. I can sit in my cafe and hear the rain come down and make muffins. Like, I have the time, and I have the time and the grocery money to buy all these ingredients and bake bread. And as somebody who's gone into baking recently, I can get a little bit. I didn't mean this to turn into like a brief apologetics for cozy fantasy, but the more I started thinking about it, the more I'm like, okay, I understand why this could be a level of escapism for some people. And I understand it's not necessarily popular, especially with the traditional crowd. And I think there is a point to be made for how quickly it has overtaken, I would say, the TTRPG space and the traditional publishing space, and in some ways the indie space, like I think it's Legends and Lattes, which apparently is actually a fairly good book. I haven't read it myself, but there are some people who say it's actually a decent read. So no slight intended there, but I think there's a conversation to be had over how quickly it's taken over the industry. But I think there is a need there that was met surprisingly by this module. And I think um, there is some discussion as to why there was that need there in the first place. But that's a conversation, complete conversation for that could be like at a 2 hour, 3 hour stream.
yeah, no, I definitely agree with you, and it's interesting because my wife makes crafts and dolls and stuff like that, and she sells them at craft shows. Um,
Yeah,
so I sort of have like an insight into this world, and I think that there's really something there. Which, while there may be a male female split, I think it's also generational. And
hmm,
I think a lot of Gen Z and maybe younger millennial males are also kind of on that as well. And I
yeah,
think it has something to do just with the world that we live in,
yeah,
where like everything feels sterile, and you go grocery shopping and you buy bread, but it's got like more chemicals in there than
yeah,
you recognize. And so I think like going back, like somebody who knows how to make their own clothes and make their own
yeah. My sister is currently sewing sews dresses for her daughter. Like got into it recently. I was over at my mom's house. They were like making handmade stuffed animals for Christmas.
Mhm.
Like it's these kind of hobbies are being picked again. They talk about it. Um and just leaning into that, my favorite errand, I kid you not, is actually going to the butcher's. There is a butcher shop like 20 minutes down the road that I don't need the GPS for anymore. I go there and I'm so proud of myself because I know exactly what to get in the budget that I've already prepared for myself and I know how to just take it home and I throw on a podcast and I cut up all the meat and I put it in the freezer and I portion it out correctly and it's and they know my name. They know me. They recognize me there. I can recognize other people, the people I'm working with. So, yeah, there is a cultural like, and it just feels so easy and relaxing, and I feel like that is part of the reason why fantasy has taken that tilt is because it's um people crave the slower aspects of life, I think.
I
Yeah.
think so, and I think too that especially not to get too political, but recently, at least here in the U.S., we've had a ton of inflation, which has
Mm,
really taken items that maybe used to be something everybody could afford fairly often and
yeah.
put into more of the luxury items.
Yeah.
So I've had this weird theory for a while that we're entering a period that's going to be a mix of the 1930s and 1980s.
Mm,
That eventually we're going to end up with optimism for the future, like I remember in the 80s. Uh,
yeah.
People are going to have to relearn self sufficiency and they're going to have to do more for themselves.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff I think got kicked away because it was like women's work. And then, but even for the men, like talking to younger people, like, why don't you fix your front steps? Like, oh my God, how would I do that? Uh,
Yeah.
like those
Yeah.
additional roles, like, hey, those were actually kind of useful. Uh,
Yeah.
but
No, it's a like my husband does like our oil changes now.
yeah,
Like and that kind of thing. Like and that saves us a little bit of money and that kind of thing.
absolutely.
But heading back to books and I think that is part of the reason why fantasy has taken the this I don't say the swerve that it has. Um but I think that as science fiction has kind of um entered this malaise because uh I feel like it's become less optimistic. Like it's
Yeah,
become more of a survival thing.
yes.
Um the newest science fiction book I've probably read, besides Devin Erickson's Theft of Fire, which was pretty good. That was actually a good like had some optimism in it, but also had like the little bit of cyberpunky stuff in there as well. Um, there was a book called The Cure for Mortality or something like that,
Mhm.
and it was pretty interesting. Where it was they discovered a cure for death,
Mm.
and the entire book is told through news articles and blog posts and things like that, and there are some kind of interesting things, but overall it's like this was a bad thing, like this step forward was a bad thing. It's everything from the dad who lost his wife is like, why did I take this? Like my wife died 15 years ago, I'm never gonna see her now. And then marriages have become like leased marriages because we're gonna be together forever. Forever becomes a lot longer when
Yeah,
yeah.
I can't.
Um there was even a case where a mother gave it to her baby and the baby just didn't age.
Ooh,
Yeah, so it was just like didn't age, didn't die, and it's just like that's a like a going back to the horror, that's a little bit of horror in sci-fi in and of itself. Um so but it's that kind of thing that I'm going to be interested to see just culturally if we do re-enter like the stage of optimism like you said. Um is going to be, I wonder how that's going to affect science fiction. Like, are we gonna get back to our lycra and velour suits and our goldfish bowl helmets and
No, but I mean that is kind of curious to me. I think everyone would agree that there are a lot of societal changes going on now.
yeah,
Whether they're going to be good or bad, who knows?
mm,
But I think that they are particularly potentially game changing for the human species, where we sort
yeah,
of have to recontextualize how we live and how we work and fit into society. So I
yeah,
can definitely see why there would be more of a more dread and more concern in a
yeah,
lot of fiction.
yeah. It's either that or it's I don't want to say it just turned it's or it becomes very hardcore into whatever genre. I think military science fiction has just become more. I mean, I haven't read a lot of it, so people, someone can correct me. I think that military sci-fi has probably become more geared toward that audience because I think
Yeah,
people who don't want to be in this other part of sci-fi anymore, they want military sci-fi. They're like, okay, I'll give you military sci-fi, so they'll go probably deeper into. I wanted 2001 or 2010 and said I got Snow Crash. I'm sorry, Bill. Um, but I feel like Bill's gonna tap dance out with with the crook when it's about time for you to go on his stream. Um, but I genuinely think it's uh people would probably go deep harder into the the hard sci-fi or the military sci-fi to kind of counterbalance out
yeah.
from the malaise and things like that. Um, that or science fiction has become very realistic, like The Martian and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I agree. And so, sort of going forward, there's, of course, there's mainstream publishing,
Yeah,
which, at least in the past, has sort of not only published what people like, but they've also published. They've sort of been tastemakers. If they only publish thing A, that sort of by default becomes what's popular,
yeah,
um, even if it means tons of people just leave that
yeah,
genre. But we're also in a time of indie publishing where
yes,
it's never been easier for an author to connect directly to the audience.
correct.
How is that going to make things work? Like, I was talking with somebody recently, and well, she's probably about your age. And she was talking about, like, things were much cooler in the 80s. In the 90s, like, they have their own flavor. If you're watching a movie from then, you know exactly what decade it is. But something happened, like, just a little after the year 2000. And certainly there's nothing different now in 2010. So do you think that's kind of where we're going with, like, publishing, where you're not going to have these way, like, YA was big for a while and then switches to this and that? Are we just sort of like a big mix and that doesn't change and you just get
I
a sub genre?
I think what's going to happen is that probably over the next 30 years, we are going to see like a dissolution of all of the main traditional publishers. Like I think a lot of them are in a lot of financial trouble right now.
Mhm.
Penguin uh, and Random House were actually sued by the government a couple years ago because they wanted to merge, and that would have violated anti-monopoly laws in the United States. And then there was an editor's strike at another large publishing house, like maybe 6 months later. Um, so I think right now they are just trend chasing to try to keep up um, as much money and intake as possible. But they are ignoring. Um, they're catering to women essentially. They're catering to, I would say, women in their uh, late 20s to mid 40s
Mhm.
mostly. Um, and it shows in what they are pushing right now. And I'm not going to say that it's a bad thing, because it is a financial decision that they are making to try to stay afloat. And it makes sense, because I think these are the women who are spending right now
Mhm.
more often than not. Um, but it has had an effect on the industry, where they have completely ignored a lot of other demographics.
Yeah.
And I think that's where indie publishing is coming in, because even even the gals who will proudly say they only read dark romance, I had a couple people come up, not a lot, but enough, at my booth, who have said, "Oh yeah, I started in that, but I want to read something different now." And they'll pick up like my fantasy book, or they'll pick up a horror book, or that kind of thing. Like they'll, um, I think even the women who got back into reading via, let's just say, adult oriented fantasy content for sake of YouTube, um, like this. I think a lot of them, except for the most hardcore, are starting to see it as a joke. You can tell, because when YouTubers start openly making fun of these women, even other women are starting to point it out. You can tell that there is a shift going in the tide. The tide is shifting, so to speak. I follow a couple different YouTubers, like Papa Meats, Sydney Watson, a couple of the other, and even a couple of people who aren't necessarily like in the alternative, have just started finding out, hey, this is kind of a little messed up. Like how there's just a lot to do with that. It's a whole can of worms conversation in and of itself. But I think generally speaking, there is a tide turning in the interest of some of these that that's going to be on the stream tonight, Bill. You, you and Yang, Dungeon Delver After Hours.
Could be.
Good. But um, where is my brain? The problem with traditional publishing is a lot like the video game industry, where they are very slow to turn around. And they will ride this wave until it drives it into the ground, because they are very slow to adapt. And I think that's going to be the downfall. That's what I'm saying. Over the next 30 years, I think that these publishing houses are going to either be gone entirely, or they will have sold off a lot of their properties, or they will be significantly smaller and leaner than they once were. Um, right now, they dominate the market, and I don't think that's going to last very much longer. What I think is going to happen, though, is I think that there are going to be indie publishing companies. Yep, the A in adult. That's true. It's advanced. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Um, but I think there's going to be um, a rise in indie publishing platforms, and I think they're going to be a lot more niche than traditional publishing was. I think there'll be a couple where it's just like this is like a general science fiction fantasy, because there is a certain truth to the idea that a book published through publishing houses might have a slightly more filtered set. You can kind of, and I don't want to be mean to indie like self-publishing, because I'm self-published. Um, there is a certain level of quality control that's found more with publishing houses, and I'm self-published, and I'm going to just state for the record right now, um, I'm not considering any offers of working with publishers, because I have yet to meet a publisher that I for one reason or another feel entirely comfortable proceeding forward with.
Yeah.
Some of that is a result of I don't think it's a good genre fit. Um, some of it is uh, I don't know if I'd collaborate well with the people behind the scenes. Some of it is AI policy related, and that's again another entirely can of worms. But I have my own opinions, and I try to operate by them. Um, but it's but there is some truth to the idea that having publishers, and I think readers are going to come to these publishing houses specifically to see what their catalog is, to
Yeah.
have a more a screened process, because I think the statistics right now is that there are more books being published every year than there are people who are actively reading, which is
Yeah.
not a good number unto itself. To quote Matthew McConaughey, those are rookie numbers. We need to get those numbers up. I think in general, I think reading is also becoming more popular again. In general. Um, Hi JM. Thanks for stopping by. Um, but I I said, I think there is going to be a certain elevation to indie houses again. I think they're going to be more niche. I think they're going to have a smaller cut of the pie, but I don't think we're going to have titans of the industry like we used to. Um,
I don't think so. To me, I think, well, you might be too young to remember this, but it's going to be like radio shows used to be.
mm,
Have a DJ, and you could be listening to the same radio station,
yeah,
and it's all the same genre, but in that DJ's 2 hour block, they're the ones selecting all the songs.
yeah.
Uh,
Well,
it's very
I know what a radio show is,
well, but don't take.
but I know what you mean.
Yeah, it's very different now than it was like in
Yeah,
the 80s where you know
yeah. But no, I get you. But that's kind of what I'm getting at, is that there's going to be like a curation via publishing house, but it's going to be a lot more niche, and it's going to be a lot more indie focused, I think. So
So speaking of being an indie author, um, the constant campaigning and trying to get the message out about your product is pretty much relentless when you're on this side of the aisle.
yeah,
How do you go about that? Well, I guess in a couple ways. Like first, I think that there's naturally some embarrassment that everyone feels like, oh, here's my thing, come look at this. Like, but you got to be like, this is the greatest thing ever. You're gonna love it. There's that, and then how do you manage? I always use the analogy of like poking someone with a stick. Like if I poked you with a stick once, you be like, huh, what? How many times could I poke you with that stick before you smack me? And I kind of feel like that's that's how doing your own advertising is sometimes.
yeah. Um, well, I would say that um uh Alyssa, Alyssa once quote tweeted me some kind of famous. Well, basically. Um, I would say that it's I've been on Twitter now, I want to say a little over 2 years now. And I think a lot of people think that, oh, she kind of blew up overnight, and it's like kind of I've actually not really like an overnight thing, but like came kind of like 2 years is here. Like, what's up with that? Um, I have had two failed YouTube channels and a failed Twitter. Um, and so I think part of me learning how to engage with people now is a result of what did started doing YouTube when I was 17. Um, about 10 years of trying to figure out how to get people to interact with my content. Um, and one thing I learned is that people don't necessarily mind getting advertised to, but people don't like feeling like they're getting the wool pulled over their eyes.
Yes.
And people don't like inauthenticity. Um, so part of how I present myself on X, and it's, I guess it's a little bit more deranged than I am in person. Um, Part of how I present myself on X is I don't make any. I don't hide the fact that I'm here. I'm here to sell books. First off,
Yeah.
I don't hide the fact that I'm a writer. I mean, I've changed it to Queen of the Raccoons, but I talk about being a writer all the time. Um, I talk about things that interest me. Now, I don't talk about all of my interests, which I think is what people sometimes neglect to sort of Venn diagram. But there should be a Venn diagram when you're a writer about the things that um, you write and the things that people like talking about, and then where they collide. And in there, you pick the things that you actually can authentically engage with. So it doesn't look like you're a poser or a tourist or whatever,
Mhm.
or just doing this to sell books. For example, if you're writing military fiction, military sci fi, and you also like guns, there are people who go on Facebook groups and are able to get into Facebook gun groups and connect with people and sell books that way. I write sci-fi fiction and horror, which all tend to be in the TTRPG space a little bit. And I've been playing TTRPG since I was 8. Um, so I try to do Venn diagram of TTRPGs, writing, books, TV and movies, which I also like. And I think you can learn something from about writing from different forms of media.
Absolutely.
But I like Korean soap operas. I think that might surprise some people, maybe. Um, but um, I don't talk about the Korean soap operas like except for in like vague references on X, because that's not what people engage with me and that can connect over to my stuff. Um, I think again a combination of a slight curation, um, figuring out what topics can connect in and that you can connect to authentically, and through that connect with people. Um, but I think it's also maintaining a certain level of professionalism. I think a lot of authors, um, some of whom that I respect and I like, get really tied up in politics,
Mhm.
in drama, in getting argumentative online. And that might sell you a couple books in the short term, but writing is a long term career. It's a marathon. Um, and being able to network and connect with people. For example, I think a lot of people consider J.K. Rowling a controversial figure, no matter which way you look at her.
Yeah.
Um, I I'll keep my opinions to myself, but I will say I do kind of like her a little bit. Um, but that being said, J.K. Rowling is J.K. Rowling.
Mhm.
Before she ever started sharing her opinion, she established herself as a titan of the industry. Um, so she can say whatever the heck she wants, and it doesn't bother her or worry her. Her
Yeah.
her bills get paid. Um, Larry Correa, I think, is another good example of this. Like, agree with him or disagree, he is established in the industry. He has the respect of a lot of people. He gets invited places. People like engaging with him, for better or for worse. And people, there are people who like him. I know some people might be shocked by that. Um, I've met him in person. I think he's an all right kind of guy. He's actually kind of a lot more soft spoken in person, but all right kind of person. Um, but both of these people, who I think people would consider controversial, talk politics, that kind of thing, um, they established themselves pretty significantly. And that's why when they started speaking like this, they had that margin already built in. Um, I think if you try to reverse engineer it and put the politics and the controversy before you've established yourself, what you get known for is controversy and politics and not for your books.
Yeah. And well, and that kind of brings up an interesting question. I don't think I've ever heard you talk about comic books, but we'll talk about briefly
Yeah.
another form of literature, which is in the comic book space. Recently, there's been a lot of people who have um, large-ish YouTube
Mhm.
channels, say 100K followers
Yeah.
plus, and they will convert that into comic book sales.
Yeah.
And it's like a backdoor way to get into the industry. Um, do you think that this is something that's going to happen to the indie authors? Now, of course, every indie author in the world would love to have a YouTube channel with 100,000 followers. Uh,
Yeah.
but is it going to be necessary to do the YouTube thing first and then start to publish, or is it better to publish and hopefully build up the audience along the way?
I think it's important to do both. I think that if you talk about writing and Alice is good, making every single post a way to pimp those books. Tell you book in the replies, hey, listen, a hustler's got to be hustling, you know. Um,
Yeah, if
but
anyone wants to buy
maybe
books,
maybe he needs a new pair of shoes. um, I think it has to be both. I think that if you are a YouTuber who has never published anything but are talking about how to sell books or how to market books or how to write books effectively, I think you're just talking out of your butt. Um, like there, you have no authority to talk about these kind of things. Not trying to be mean to anybody who does that, but it's just like if you have not yet written a book, you shouldn't be trying to tell other people how to write a book. Thank you for the compliment. It's the same way. Like if you're not a plumber, you shouldn't be giving advice about plumbing, or you haven't been doing plumbing for years, that kind of thing. So
I
that's
have
why.
a YouTube
Yeah,
channel.
yeah. But I think that's why you have to do it at the same time. Like I would advise a lot of people, if you are new to writing and you haven't written and you are planning on publishing your first book and you haven't yet published it. My biggest mistake when okay, let me rephrase. I've made a lot of mistakes that I've learned from over the past 5 6 I'm not that shameless, Bill. um anyways, but the sorry, my train of thought. Bill, you can't keep distracting me. I have to get this man ready for you in a couple of minutes. But I think that if you are you okay?
Oh, was
Sorry,
that?
there was like a noise.
Oh,
Um,
it's coming from you.
oh, terrible. It's probably a ghost. It is the spooky season. Uh, I think that probably one of my biggest mistakes early on was not establishing any sort of social media presence at all. Like I would occasionally post on a official author page on Facebook and maybe on Instagram, and that was it. And then I said, hey, I've got my book up, and I put a post up and I sold a couple copies, and then I didn't really grow any of those platforms in the time between any of my first 3 books. And it's no wonder why my first 3 books and through the third test at the beginning did not perform very well. So my recommendation, honestly, is to not pretend like you know more than you do. Just say, hey, working on my first book in your bio, likes cats, da 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 da. Like, these are my other interests. And then you can just share memes, talk about things you like, and then give progress updates.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that way, even if you don't have a large following by the time you do your first publication, um, you still have something of a following that might be interested enough, maybe not in your book, but connected enough with you that they're interested in giving you a shot. Or you might have had time to connect with other writers in the meantime. I would say probably the most fruitful thing that's come out of X, except for the memes, have been connecting with a lot of people who are readers, who are writers, who are publishers and editors, and or just people who are like, hey, I'll beta read for you. Like I'm interested in your projects. I want to help you out. And I usually send them a free copy as a thank you, either ebook or physical if they prefer. So it's um, I think there is an inherent value to building a social media platform. Heck, you could do YouTube and just make it like a blog thing, like, hey, this is what we're doing today, or talk about the process as you're learning, that kind of thing. But I think that you can get yourself into a lot of trouble if you pretend to have expertise where you don't.
Yes, especially in this space.
Yeah. Um, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's funny. You remind me of a comment I got years ago. I think I was telling you backstage when I first started this channel, I used to intentionally say something small that was wrong um,
Yeah.
on every video. And there was one I was talking about the chromatic orb spell, and it was just stupid video. And I intentionally said the distance wrong, and I honestly don't remember what it is now. But someone called me on it, and their comment was, "Who the f do you think you are? Who the f
Yeah.
you can make videos about Dungeons and Dragons?" And it was like, wow,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's a lot more intense than I expected.
Yeah, people are can be a little cuckoo when it comes down to their hobbies, but um no, I think that's just genuinely the best way to start about it is just start connecting with people and sharing your progress and inspiration and things like that, and then you go from there. Um yeah.
So, as an author, now we were talking a little bit about big publishers, and one of the benefits of going with a big publisher is they've got a ton of resources for you. You're going to
Mhm.
get an editor, whether you like it or not. You do have you'll have an in with somebody who can make a cover. You've got people to typeset and hopefully proofread. As an indie author,
Mhm.
you are kind of on your own. But as the saying goes, no man or woman is an island. So, as an indie author, how do you decide where to get help and what you should do yourself?
Um Okay, that's usually a very tricky question to answer because um, part of it comes down to money.
Mhm.
I am firmly of the opinion that your dream doesn't necessarily have to uh, not happen because you don't have the money in hand. But I also am firmly of the opinion that you should never go into debt to follow your dream. I think that
Yeah.
I've seen way too many people share horror stories about being 5,000 in the black, 10,000 in the black on their first book. And I'm like, you're never going to make up that amount of money. Like, unless it's like a once in a lifetime thing, and then that brings a whole nother kettle of fish worth of problems to your life. Um, but I think that um, when you start off doing short stories or small novels, I think that makes it easier to clean up those kind of things than if you're writing a full, Game of Thrones brick kind of thing at the beginning.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's an easy way to get feedback on things. For me personally, I had an editor the first three books. First one basically ran my book through Grammarly and didn't do anything else. It still charged me like $700 in 2017 money.
Ooh.
So yeah. Um, Second one, there were just kind of issues there as well. And the third one did a pretty good job. But by the time I got there, I was like, okay, um, I'm still in the hole for my first three books. I don't really have a lot of money. I'm feeling incredibly discouraged, and I don't really want to put a lot of money into this. So the third test was what I lovingly call my drunken lawn dart of a book. I made a lot of mistakes. Which included finishing editing at 3 o'clock in the morning and immediately submitting it because that was really smart of me. Since then, I've actually had somebody go through and proofread again, and it's cleaned up. It's very pretty, and I'm very proud of it. But I made a cover on Canva. My original cover, I just made myself from some stock things and changed some colors around, and people really liked it. I so it really depends on the project, and it depends on where you are in your life situation. I think that if you're able to set aside money going into a project, I would say at least getting a proofreader would be good. You don't necessarily have to go into the full content editing because that's where I think things get expensive. But if you have somebody going in and just looking for like punctuation, basic grammatical things, I think that can be the real trip up for a lot of people. Like plot holes aside, like you can those are things that you learn more about when you're further down the line. But just like the basic grammatical kind of cleanups. But there are plenty of ways to do create covers on Canva that are very serviceable, even if they're not your favorite, even if they're not like um, a Frank Frazetta original kind of thing. But no, it's a I so I guess it depends on the project. It depends on where you are in life. Just don't go into debt to do it, and um, if you can get help from things or barter services, for the third test, for example, I did a book swap actually with another writer, and because he is very good at like noticing those things,
Mhm.
and I am not. Um, so he did that, and I went through and I looked at things from a prose and plot perspective, which is tends to be my strength is more like there's the kind of plot elements and the prose and that kind of thing. Um, and which is another reason why you should network. But it's I think when you're a self-published author, becoming creative and learning where you can say, okay, this I do need to spend money on, this I don't need to spend money on. There are ways of circumnavigating this. But I guess that's an answer to the question. I don't know if that quite got it, but
Sure.
yeah.
So I have a question from the chat. I have a question for Alyssa. Do you have to basically be born with the spirit of an author, or do you think anyone can write if they put the work in?
That's a very interesting question, and uh, I think it's very hard to say. I think that writing, like any other artistic discipline, if you want to do it well and if you want to make it a career, it has to be something that you really, really want to do. Um, when uh, when I published most of my books, um, I was working full time on top of writing stuff. I would spend my evenings typing or between YouTube videos. Like it's a great sacrifice. Like until like this year, I would say I didn't really have any hobbies besides writing. Let me just put it like that. Um, when every spare hour that you have, even when you're tired and you just want to play video games or you want to watch a TV show or anything like that, um, when you have to have something within yourself to say, even if you don't know how it's going to go, you have to have something within you that says, "This is something I really am passionate about. This is what I want to do." Um, and that I think is a driving force that you get because you are passionate about the subject. And it's not just about completing it; it's about, okay, this project did not do well. Let's do it again.
Mhm.
And then if that didn't go, okay, let's do this again. Like, and again until you call your mother at 9 o'clock at night and say you hate this book and you just want to throw it away, and she has to talk you off the ledge. And then you do it again, and then you do it again. Um, because I wouldn't say I was successful, and by successful I mean um, I was making enough money to put back into my books and didn't have to outsource the money towards like things I was earning outside of it
Mhm.
until I published. I would say until I published like the second initiative, which was a couple months ago. Um,
July 19th.
yeah, maybe a little bit before that, but I think it is. Um, it's something where if you don't want to do it professionally, I think there's plenty of room to just say, you know what, I just want to do this as a hobby. I just want to sit down and scribble in my journal or plunk away at a keyboard, and that's okay. Like I feel like there's a pressure sometimes that I if I do that pursue this artistic thing, I have to want to do it professionally or I have to do this or that. The guy who did the cover for my first book, The Twitching Light, which is a beautiful piece. Um, yeah, that one. He he remaining anonymous. He was a mason. Is a mason by trade. He
Mhm.
doesn't do that professionally. He takes the projects that he wants and he does them, and that was his thing. And he is a fantastic artist who could do it professionally, but he doesn't want the pressure and he doesn't want this and that. He doesn't want to have to go through the process of being a professional writer. So, artist, I should say. So, to answer your question, I think that if anyone wants to, they can. But there has to be an underlying passion for the endeavor, something that gets you fired up about it every single day, or at least enough days out of the week that you actually want to sit down and write. Um, because if that passion's not there, I just think I think it can be a very miserable existence if that's not what you really want to do.
Yeah, and I think end goal is important too. So, like you're
Mm,
saying with the artist, he doesn't want to do it as the day job,
yeah,
which probably keeps it more enjoyable for him.
yeah,
Well, Christopher, I think if you want to write, uh, just start writing, and then. But if you're like, yeah, I want to sell books, and I want that to be the way I support myself in life, then you really got to dedicate a lot to it.
yeah,
If you're okay with writing one book every decade, then
yeah. I
you
mean,
go longer.
like Tolkien, who is considered by many to be the father of fantasy as we know it. He was a linguistics professor
Yeah.
pretty much the entire time he wrote. I think there's a story about Diane Wynne Jones, the writer of Howl's Moving Castle, like harassing him at his lectures, wanting to know what was going on with his books. Like this wasn't his professional full time job. Like,
Yeah. But
yeah,
The Rings was his side gig.
yeah.
His
Can you
pro-
imagine that being your side gig? Oh, Tolkien. Anyways, also today was I think it's the anniversary of his death. So yeah,
yes.
shout out to the
Even though
yeah
I, if we're gonna get into controversy, I don't know. I hate to say it, but it's maybe better that he didn't get to revise his stuff even more.
yeah. I think that um I think that and this might sound controversial as well. Um, Tolkien is not my favorite writer, but I think he deserves a lot of respect for what he did to the genre. Um, I think he just changed the game forever as we know it. Between him, C.S. Lewis, and Robert E. Howard, um, they pretty much solidified fantasy as we know it. Um, so it's yeah. I mean, I don't know if he had further edited things, it would have been any more ruined. But I've read the trilogy and I've read The Hobbit. The Silmarillion is in there somewhere. I think I have a version by Andy Serkis, the audiobook on my phone somewhere.
Yeah.
On Spotify actually does audiobooks. Fun fact. And you get some of them for free.
And I believe you have several audiobooks for anyone who are audiobook fans.
Yeah. I have To Those Who Haunt You and The Third Test are both in audiobook format. And the second initiative is complete. It is just Audible is taking its sweet time to get around to approving it. It usually takes a ridiculous amount of time to get through, like 10 to 15 days. It's very silly, but oh well. It'll get out eventually. Yeah. But no.
So for people who want to follow you, you were saying before you might be taking a little bit of a social media
Hi.
vacation
Yeah.
hiatus.
I want to get a little bit more crunched in on my book. I'm 20 weeks pregnant, so getting a little bit more time to just relax and focus in on it would be amazing. It's not going to be like for a long time. I'm thinking about a week, but you know how a week in internet culture is like 3 months. I'll come back and 7 of my friends will be canceled or
The whole platform would be burned down.
yeah. I'll come back and the Lord Otter would have published his next book, and I'm like, what the heck? Where did all this go? But no, I'm probably gonna be starting that up pretty soon. But yeah, so if you want to find me, I am on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Ellis with this third S Hazel. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at author Alyssa Hazel. And I have a website. It's not the most up to date, but if you're interested in kind of perusing what I have, that's there. Um, yeah, that's where I am mostly available.
All right. Well, it was excellent to have you. I think it's been a most fruitful discussion, and
Yeah,
hopefully we'll have you back before
sounds good.
when you're after your hiatus. We'll see.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
So everyone, thanks for coming. I guess I am going to be over at the Dungeon Delvers channel in a couple minutes playing something for Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know. And I know that on Friday I will be on his channel playing Gamma World, where I'm currently playing an insectoid with a human torso. And Friday earlier in the day, 4 p.m. Eastern, I will have the Basic Expert talk about White Box, which is his new version of original D&D, sort of an updating so it actually makes sense instead of having arcane rules that are impossible to find. But oh yes, Harmony Ginger will have 6 more pets.
That's true. I think the cat stuff. I think she's actually a druid, which would make sense because I think she lives in Florida. So like, there's the Florida man, druid class.
Somewhere between druid and Disney princess. I'm not sure which, or maybe both.
Both is good.
But it was nice to talk to you.
Nice talking to you.
Like we share home interior decorating designs.
Yeah. So this is this is going to be the nursery by the time it's all said and done. So my background might look different by the time there might be some Winnie the Pooh prints on the wall by the time you stop by next.
All right. Good night, everyone, and we'll hopefully see you back on Friday.